What you've come to know as NGP, our next generation portable, is officially named PlayStation Vita.
I've been playing my PS Vita for a very long time, and I've been watching a lot of videos talking about the Vita. I've made a lot of videos talking about the Vita, but something I never really discussed is how the Vita failed in the first place. What did Sony do to screw up so bad? The Vita had so much potential, had so many features that went underutilized, and Sony just let it go to waste. And some of you might be asking, how did Sony screw the pooch on this one? Well, it all realistically started when it was originally announced. At a price of $250, it was just drastically more expensive than the 3DS at the time. But there was still hope. At the keynote event, we saw announcements from AAA developers porting and bringing their franchises and games to the Vita. The Vita promised to have AAA console-class experiences. In the long run, just simply went underutilized or completely abandoned by all third-party developers by the end of its life. Some might argue that the Vita was ahead of its time. I would agree. The Vita originally launched with a AT&T collaboration to bring 3G wireless connectivity to the Vita, which might seem like a really interesting idea, and the main reason why they would have brought this to the Vita was for remote play, and it advertised being able to remotely connect to a PS3 or a PS4 and remotely play your games on it, kinda like how a PlayStation Portal works today. But with data speeds at the time, it wasn't exactly feasible with at least any good latency. In the best of conditions, it was just okay. And for most people, I was borderline unplayable. Another major reason why the Vita failed? The proprietary, hyper-expensive memory cards. The PSP used memory stick duos, which was a proprietary standard, but could be easily adapted to other media formats, just due to its larger size. But instead of continuing using memory stick duos like they did with the PSP, Sony developed a brand new proprietary SD card format just to be smaller and prevent stuff like hacking and homebrewing, which inevitably backfired on them anyways. The price for a 32GB memory card was $100. That is insanely expensive for the time, and today could have bought a standard SD card for about $20 at 32GB capacity. It only went more insane from there, being upwards of $200 for 120GB or 64GB. Later on, the community would devise a way to utilize the game cartridge slot in a combination, turning that into a micro SD card adapter, would later make a workaround so you wouldn't have to use Sony's proprietary storage devices, or you can rely on the internal storage of later models of the Vita. On top of that, those proprietary memory cards are still incredibly expensive today, and for those people who have an original launch Vita, require you to have a memory card. But thankfully, the community has developed a workaround like I had mentioned. Vita was chock full of brand new high-end features that a lot of mobile devices at the time didn't even have. It had a nice high-quality 480p OLED display. It was beautiful, and it's still one of the nicest looking displays on a gaming device we've ever had. Even today, the same display is used in other handhelds from Anbernic and stuff that we still remark as a beautiful display today. In combination with that high quality display, it had the touch backing that allows you to interact with games in a new way. It had dual analog sticks, a fully glass front, one of the highest build qualities you'll ever see on a portable gaming device, offering features like cellular connectivity, front-facing and rear-facing cameras. It was trying to do a little bit of everything, because at the time, Sony was dealing with major competition from mobile phone developers. Sony really was threatened by their existence and felt like if they didn't truly innovate or make a truly massive leap in their portable gaming technology, that they'll just be overshadowed by the rise of mobile gaming. But I feel like if Sony just gave it a little bit more time, let the Vita cook a little bit longer, they could have offered a little bit more performance and courted a little bit more developer interest in the platform than they ended up doing so, because a major problem with the Vita was under-delivering in its major first-party developed games. Not to say those games were bad, but they were not the high-quality console experiences Sony was touting. And due to the disastrous launch with that incredibly high price, a lot of developers backed out early on the Vita. Most of them never even starting development on their Vita games or scrapping their projects entirely. Another major problem the Vita encountered for its launch was poor advertising. And when I say poor advertising, there was like zero advertising at all. I was alive at this time, and I don't remember seeing a single Vita ad, but I remember seeing 3DS ads everywhere. There was the kiosk at the Target, the kiosk, every store, department store in my town had a 3DS station. I never saw a Vita section. I never saw a setup. The only place I would ever see a Vita is at GameStop in the used game section. Sony may have blew their budget on developing the amazing hardware that was the Vita, but they sacrificed being able to bring people, actually show people what their device could do in advertising and try to gain some mind share just to have a better device, which might have killed them in the long run. Similar to how Nintendo killed the Wii U with its horrible advertising. In Nintendo's case, it wasn't the lack of advertising, it was overall shitty advertising, catering to an audience and a demographic that was just a bunch of kids, and when they're trying to sell the cons to adults, very weird. The Vita suffered the inverse problem. It just didn't have enough advertisements. I would say the other major component, like competing factor that wasn't mobile gaming, it was the 3DS itself. The 3DS had a very rocky launch, but by the announcement and release of the Vita, the 3DS has found its legs. It really started to hit its stride. We saw revisions of the console, new price drops, sales, a massive amount of first-party titles and third-party support hit the 3DS, and it had almost a year and a half, 2 years to gain all that support that the Vita was lacking. People were comparing the 3DS to the Vita, while the 3DS had an advantage of a couple years on the Vita to coordinate with its third-party developers, really coerce some massive development, launch a better marketing campaign, lower its prices, refine its processes, leaving Sony just whatever was left of the people who were waiting for the next PlayStation device. Already touched on it before, but Sony themselves directly blame mobile gaming as the reason why they weren't making a second PlayStation Vita. And I feel like that's kind of a defeatist mindset. As we've all seen, mobile gaming has seen its rises and falls in these years, but it just never really felt the same as playing a standard gaming console. It attracts different audiences in different experiences in general. Playing a mobile game on a console just feels weird because you're just used to playing that on the bus or on the toilet. When you play a game on something like a Vita, you sit down with the intention to play, to immerse yourself in some good quality content. But when you play a mobile game, you sort of sit down and mindlessly swipe away at Bejeweled for 5 minutes while you're waiting in a lobby. I understand Sony's mindset at the time. It was 2015. We truly didn't understand what mobile gaming was going to become. But if they just had a little bit more patience or just a bit stronger will to tough out that initial boom of mobile gaming, for everybody to sort of figure out what they're into and what they're not into, and really see what takes off in the mobile gaming space, they would have realized the Vita could be the perfect middle ground between a home console and playing on your mobile phone. The Vita could have been that perfect in-between device, allowing you to play higher quality experiences while in a nice small form factor, similar size to a smartphone. And I've talked about how Sony could have fixed it, could have just waited a little bit longer to release the device, or released it a little bit sooner to be better competition poised at the 3DS, capitalized on the 3DS's large price tag at the time, being a little bit more expensive than a launch 3DS, but offering so much more. That would have been a perfect opportunity for Sony to capitalize on the higher performance and higher quality experience you would get with the Vita in comparison to the more expensive at the time 3DS. Or they could have waited a little bit longer to release the Vita for it to be a little bit more powerful, have it make a little bit more sense as a proper home console on the go experience. But it was just, at the end of the day, a wasted potential. They could have really made the Vita work if they really tried to talk to third-party developers, put an effort into their first-party experiences, and the ones that they did make were amazing. Tearaway is still one of my favorite games of all time. Persona 4 Golden is one of the best JRPGs I've ever played, and none of that would have been possible without the Vita. The Vita was such a unique and amazing device, such emblematic of its time, and it died before it could truly see its full potential. So what are your thoughts? Do you think Sony royally fucked up with the Vita? Do you wish Sony actually tried a little bit harder or tried a slightly different positioning for the Vita? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and concerns down below. What did you think Sony could do differently? Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. All the other social media garbage down below. And last but not least, have a wonderful day.